Welcome to Even Tacos Fall Apart. Sometimes things do fall apart, but I hope this podcast helps you also understand that you don't have to put yourself back together alone. I'm MommaFoxFire, and today's episode is all about avoiding narcissists and navigating narcissism. We've all encountered those folks who seem to suck the energy right out of the room, leaving us feeling drained and sometimes questioning our own worth. Maybe you've even found yourself in a relationship with someone who exhibits narcissistic behavior, leaving you feeling trapped and powerless. Today's episode is packed with practical advice and real-life insights from our guest, Derek Newborn. Throughout our conversation, Derek shares his own experiences with narcissism and offers valuable tips on how to spot the red flags early on. We'll discuss the importance of setting boundaries, practicing self-awareness, and cultivating resilience in the face of adversity. But this episode isn't just about identifying narcissistic behavior in others. It's also about taking a hard look in the mirror and examining our own tendencies. After all, none of us are immune to the lure of narcissism, especially in a world that constantly bombards us with messages of self-importance and perfection. If you've ever found yourself questioning your worth or struggling to navigate the murky waters of toxic relationships, this episode is worth listening to. We're going to get real, we're going to get gritty, and most importantly, we're going to get empowered. So grab your favorite beverage, a cup of tea, cozy up on the couch, or keep on cooking dinner, folding laundry, driving to or from work, and get ready to dive deep into the world of narcissism with Derek Newborn. This is going to be a conversation you won't want to miss. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another Mental Health Monday. Super excited for our conversation tonight on Even Tacos Fall Apart. We are going to be talking about narcissism in a couple of ways, both avoiding becoming a narcissist and avoiding getting into relationships with a narcissist. So really looking forward to this conversation. I have a wonderful guest tonight. His name is Derek Newborn. And a little bit about Derek. After being named one of Florida's top personal trainers, Derek became a published fitness model. The more attention he received, the more self-destructive he became in every aspect of his life. This is what led to his version of rock bottom. He attempted suicide multiple times and had become a full-blown narcissist. After accepting the nightmare that he had become, instead of killing himself, he dedicated his life to killing that version of himself. He now helps victims of narcissists gain back control in their own lives through the newbornblueprint.com. I do have some links, including website, Facebook, and Instagram that I'll post in just a second. The guide that he created was created to help men avoid the common pitfalls that can lead to extreme narcissism while teaching women how to avoid falling into relationships with narcissists. Derek has been a teenage father, a construction worker, a personal trainer, a fitness model, and a business owner. He's also been a liar, a cheater, a backstabber, and a narcissist. Through his trials, tribulations, and downfalls, he has learned that it is never too late to turn your life around. His ultimate goal in creating this program is to help others live every aspect of their life at the highest level while being able to avoid the costly pitfalls of our modern society. So Derek, thank you so much for taking the time out and joining us today.
Hey, thanks for having me, and thanks for the intro. You did all the heavy lifting for me.
Absolutely. Yeah, I have a tendency to talk a little bit too fast for my own good, so I stumble over words sometimes, but that's okay. We just roll with it. It's fine.
We just roll with it.
Well, that's right. So for those who are here in chat, Bite Mark, I see you. Thank you for being here. We are going to have a question queue open. I'm going to go ahead and get that open. If you have any questions that are on topic tonight and you want to ask our guest here, feel free to type !Q, follow it with your question, and pop that into the chat. And we'll make sure to get them asked and answered here for you tonight. If you are on YouTube, that's if you're on Twitch. If you're on YouTube, just pop them into the chat. I'll make sure to keep an eye on it and capture those and everything. Tyrion is being a real butt today. So, and we're about to have our first question in the question queue. See, I told you it's gonna be there so quickly. Bite Mark would like to know, what is your favorite poem?
So, my favorite poem is, I don't even know if it's considered a poem, but we're gonna call it a poem. It goes, hard times create strong men. Strong men create good times. Good times create weak men, and weak men create hard times.
Ah,
See? You see?
yeah, very like circular there.
Yeah, everything's cyclical. Everything
Yeah.
everything is pros and cons.
Oh,
Everything's
so
good and bad. So that's why I just like it because it can apply to so many different things.
yeah.
Like through hard times is how we become developed, right? When we
Mm-hmm.
become so strong, it creates an easier life for somebody else, which starts creating hard times again. So everything is just cyclical. And once you realize that, life gets a little more easier. That's why we're gonna call that my favorite poem.
Hey, it's great. Listen, a favorite quote I happen to know by Mark will accept favorite quotes as well.
Okay, perfect. I was about to say, I hope that was good. Good enough.
Yeah, that's perfect. Yeah, I was thinking about that not too long ago also, as far as parenting goes. And I know tonight's topic is not about parenting, but allow me to rant for just a moment because, there's all kinds of people who talk about, oh, we had it so bad or whatever. And I mean, of course, it was different times when I grew up. So,
Sure.
I always try to parent my kids the way that I would like to have been parented. I did not have bad parents. Let me make that real clear and upfront. I had great parents, good childhood, and all that good stuff. But some things could have been different. That's for sure. And
Sure.
in talking to my grandma the other day, I was over there, and she was not in the present. So we were talking about her childhood, which is how I roll with her dementia and everything. And so we were talking about her childhood, and she was talking about her mom, and she was talking about her dad, and just the way that she grew up and everything. And it really kind of made me wonder, like, okay, so did my parents do the same thing that I'm doing now? Did they kind of try to parent me a little better than their parents before? And at what point is it going to be too nice? At what point is it going to loop around to that quote a little bit and be like,
Exactly.
we need to course correct some.
Exactly. Great point. Yeah, you can definitely apply it to parenting for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. So what are your biggest joys and challenges with what you do now?
So really, my biggest joys with what I do now is really truly living out my purpose and not letting my downfall and journey go in vain. Um, and another part of that biggest joy is really watching clients unfold themselves.
Mm,
Because anybody that works with me, everything they need to become the person that they want to be, they already have inside of them. So it's not like I'm not here to tell them anything. There's not a right or wrong answer. It's their own journey. And I just kind of point them in the direction of maybe look over here, maybe look this way, explore that. And so for them to be able to do the work and them be 100% responsible for their growth is really a great joy because, they're not paying somebody for a result. They're paying somebody to help guide them. So they're actually doing the work. And I think it makes it that much more impactful for them because then they can take what the journey they went on and apply it and show people that they love. So that's the biggest joy. The biggest challenge with what I do now is essentially, um, and it's not so much it doesn't have such a negative impact on me, but it's a challenge for people to actually believe that I've changed or transformed or whatever, right? Because during those dark days when I was very selfish, I hurt a lot of people, right? So um, they're not expected, or is it their responsibility to believe anything I say or see me for who I am? So I would say that's the biggest challenge, especially based around narcissism and all that.
yeah, that's got to be tough to say, like, no, really, I've changed. And then,
Yeah, that, yeah,
how do you prove you've changed? Because proving you've changed is not repeating a behavior, but How
exactly, and
long? It
that's
could be
why,
so long between a behavior.
yeah, to truly change, it has to be, you have to be able to accept that, right? Because even if I do every good deed known to man, that still doesn't warrant anybody's opinion of me, which again, it's my journey. So that's not my responsibility. I have to
Hmm.
live out my authenticity. And then if they choose to see me differently, that's their decision. But if not, it
Yeah.
doesn't change me, nor do I go out of my way to say, hey, look at me,
Right. So, when were you named Florida's top personal trainers? When were you named
About
to that?
10 years ago, almost.
So, what was the timeline there? How long did it take you to realize, oh, I've got to make a change?
Um, Let me reverse engineer this timeline. So let's say 10 years ago, got named top personal trainer, and then that really blew up my personal training business,
Hmm.
led me to we discovered becoming a fitness model for like 4 years. So 7 years ago, when I was at the height of my modeling career, was also when I was the most self-destructive and
Hmm.
most um, narcissistic. And then so, 4 years of that led to the great downfall of, my world and everybody walking away
Hmm.
into massive depression, and then um, suicide attempt with like two suicide attempts about a year apart, maybe 8 months apart.
Hmm.
And then it's since then, so about the past 3.5, almost 4 years, I've been rebuilding myself and using my lessons and journey to help others.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad you're here and doing what you're doing now. That's
Thank you.
amazing.
I am too. I am too. I am too.
Are you still a personal trainer?
Um, yes, well, I have an online fitness business
Okay.
now. So
Yeah.
instead of in person, I have a worldwide coaching platform.
Oh, that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
So, all right. So you've got the fitness business. You've got do you call yourself a life coach or a personal development coach or
I will go with life coach. Yes.
so you've got the life coaching. What do you enjoy doing when you're not busy working multiple businesses here?
I enjoy traveling a lot with my dog,
Hmm.
exploring um, Florida, which is where I live. We take a lot of road trips together. So I like doing things outdoors. I like traveling. I like going to concerts. Really, I wouldn't even say I'm living life, but I'm just creating life. Because for so long I was just in a bad place mentally and really didn't like myself. I'm at the point
Hmm.
where I'm just out creating a life that I actually enjoy.
Yeah.
So that involves all that stuff.
That's awesome. And y'all, we were talking beforehand. He has a rescue pit, which y'all know I love rescue pits. So, and it sounds like the quintessential rescue pit where it's zoomies and then naps, and
Uh,
that's it, right?
oh yeah, he gets more attention than I do on social media.
I mean, as it should be, probably.
Exactly, exactly. I'm happy about it.
Dogs could run the world as far as I'm concerned.
100%, 100%.
Do you have a favorite book or a book that you think more people should read?
Yeah. So my favorite book, and I think everybody should read, is a book called The Alchemist.
Oh,
So
yeah.
I feel like a lot of people know about, but not very many people read it. And I try to recommend it to everybody. So number one, I've probably read the book almost a dozen times. I've read it before my downfall, during my downfall, after my downfall. So every time I read it, I perceive it differently and learn something new about myself from reading it. So it's not your normal self-help book. It's actually it's like a fairy tale. It's a story.
Hmm.
All these. So depending on what point of your life you read it, you'll comprehend it completely different. That's why I've read it so many times. So I encourage people to read it because it's always great because it kind of lets me know where people are at with their own self-awareness and self-discovery, because they'll either be like they'll have the same feelings that I had and be like this book is amazing, like it's crazy, or they're like bro, this is the worst story I've ever read. Like, why did you waste my time? And that just lets me know where they're at on their level of self-awareness. So yeah, highly, and it's a quick read. You could literally read it within a day.
Mm-hmm.
Definitely a weekend. But yeah, The Alchemist.
That's awesome. So you're the second person who's recommended that book fairly recently, so I guess that's a sign that I should take the time and read it.
Read it. It's a really good read. It's interesting. It goes by fast. It's not a typical self-help book. It's actually a story.
Yeah, that's awesome. I like stories. I have a hard time reading nonfiction, and the last nonfiction book I read really did a number on me. So I've got to. I'm in the middle of like a reread some favorite books as a kid to reset my palate for a minute. But I'll put this one on there after that.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. So moving on to the topic of tonight, we're going to talk about narcissism in a couple of different ways, but to kind of set the base for us, what are the different types of narcissistic personalities and how do they manifest in individuals?
Yeah, so there's several different kinds of narcissism. So what everybody needs to realize is like adaptive narcissism, we all have at some level.
Mm-hmm.
So you have to have some kind of self-attention, self-worth, right? That's why you have this show, right? That's why we have our own platforms. But it becomes maladaptive when that touch of narcissism that we have, it becomes maladaptive when there's unhealed trauma attached to it.
Mm.
So that's the difference between adaptive and maladaptive. That you have to have some form of narcissism to essentially show up in this world to build a life for yourself, right? But when you have some unhealed trauma, usually from way back in your younger years, and that's rooted in you, then it starts kind of transforming into other forms and becomes unhealthy and all that stuff. But like, I would say myself personally, majority of my time spent was like as a covert narcissist, where had a hard time accepting like criticism from people, and always played the victim, meaning like I personally would always blame somebody else for whatever struggles I was going through.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Like, let's just say I lied. Well, it's because you did A, B, or C, right? Or I cheated because you said A, B, or C, or didn't do this, right? And I think that's probably the I don't want to say most popular, but the most common form of narcissism is like if somebody can't take criticism from their spouse or like a family member, there's probably some unhealed trauma, which is where it all comes from, right? So that's the first aspect. Is majority of it's just covert narcissism where they play the victim, right? It's never their fault. Always blame other people. Trying to think of what other forms. Antagonistic, and really those are the ones that have lower levels of like trust in people. So no matter what, they just don't trust people. And again, the only reason they don't trust people, it doesn't matter what that person, like I struggled with abandonment issues from early childhood all the way to my late 20s. So even when I got in a loving, nurturing relationship, it was burned in my brain that the people I love the most will always leave me and abandon me.
Yeah.
Right. So I did not trust my girlfriend. Didn't matter that we lived together. Didn't matter that we were together for 7 years or whatever it may be. So without trusting her, I was always looking out for my best interest, which was not be abandoned. Hence why girlfriends on the side, lying, being dishonest, all of that stuff. So there's many different names, layers of narcissism. It all comes down to somebody that has unhealed trauma.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a way of them to protect themselves. It doesn't make it right, doesn't make it wrong. It's just whatever they've experienced in life hasn't been healed. And then certain things have to happen in their life for them to become narcissistic. So me with my abandonment issues and essentially feeling isolated, getting the attention and the accolades and the growing personal training business, and then throw full-time fitness model on the fire and all of that attention, it creates a perfect storm, right? And then the people around you, right? Narcissists aren't just born, right? Things have to happen for somebody to become a narcissist.
Mm-hmm.
So that even means that people, my girlfriend at the time, she had to do certain things like forgive me, try to make it work. And essentially what she was doing was just adding fuel to the narcissist. Whereas if the first time I acted out, if she would have cut it off, then that might have, not saying it would have,
Right.
but it could have stopped a lot of the future stuff. So people have to understand, like if you've been with a narcissist and all that stuff, as terrible as it is, it's an environment that creates the narcissist. Because like I said, if they keep playing the victim and people allow it, then they're going to keep playing the victim until somebody says no more and walks away. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I mean, it's very much, everyone talks about nature versus nurture, right? And so I think that as with a lot of things, including things like depression, if you're going through life and you have a predisposition to something like depression and certain things happen in your life, it can trigger that depression, right? Now, that's not to say your life could be absolutely fucking perfect and you could still be depressed. Like, that's not to say that all depression is preventable by having a nurturing environment, because the fact is that it's not. But there are certain things that can cause it to happen that can kind of trigger that. So yeah, that makes sense to me. And I know that your personal journey involves overcoming narcissism. So can you share some specific moments? I know you talked about being a fitness model, or maybe some realizations that led you to that moment of, oh, I need to change, and kind of led you to start transforming your life.
Yeah. Essentially, like I created this massive web of lies and hurt and deceit, with number one, a lot of females outside of my girlfriend and even my family, and like just the people close to me and all the people that cared for me. And obviously it got to the point where everybody had to remove themselves because of the person that I created. So after the first attempt on my life, finally had to figure out and start reverse engineering, because the person I know that that's not the person I was put on this earth to be. I didn't believe that I was put on this earth to do this and act this way. So the first step was to acknowledge that I was the common denominator in all my life's problems. There was nobody else's fault for the situation that I was essentially in.
Mm-hmm.
And then, so again, reverse engineering, once I was able to be transparent with myself, I didn't have to lie, didn't have to protect my ego. I was already at rock bottom, already tried to take my life and all that stuff. I could start transparently looking at my actions and saying, I did this because I actually felt this way. Because even at the height of my modeling career was when I felt the worst about myself. There was just such a disconnect, because depression runs on both sides of my family. I was dealing with it way before all this stuff. So really just reverse engineering, realizing that I was the common denominator. And it kind of like flipped a switch. If I was the common denominator in all this destruction, then that means I can be the common denominator in something good. If I create this, I can do the opposite. I can create something great from that. And that's what started my journey, is, accepting the narcissism role, accepting extreme ownership of everything that had transpired, and then slowly start building myself back up from there. So that led to just massive freedom, because once I'm able to talk about it, able to own up to everything, then really there's nothing anyone can say that will hurt me, because I've already taken so much extreme ownership from it. And then from that point, it's just rebuilding and rediscovering yourself.
Mm-hmm. Was it just kind of like an aha moment for you, or was it more of a, did you go to therapy, or did you have, loved ones around you saying you need to get your shit together kind of thing, or how did that happen?
But no, I worked with a spiritual mentor. I mean, I went to every kind of retreat. I went to week-long couples therapy by myself. Like, I just essentially did anything that I thought might help gain some clarity for me, because really the hardest step was self-forgiveness, was forgiving myself for allowing myself to become that. So then the next step was building my self-worth, that I was deserving of even having an ounce of happiness in my life based on all the destruction. So I had my life coach guide me, and it was literally the first step was to just get me off of my couch, because I had so much social anxiety because of my destruction that I would just pop pills and drink and just try to pass as much time as possible. And so it was from there to just, hey, take your dog for a walk downtown, and then, hey, go out to lunch by yourself, and you start building momentum that way. And then it was the point of remembering things I used to enjoy in life before all the craziness in my teenage years and early 20s, even back as a middle schooler. What did you enjoy? I liked exploring. I liked going outside. I liked hanging out with animals, and that's what I do now. Right. So I kind of went all the way back to childhood before Derek knew anything about abandonment. What would he like to do? And that's how I started building my self-worth.
Yeah, that's really neat. I mean, I wanted to kind of get that background a little bit, because what we're going to talk about is these things that it sounds like, oh, you do this and you flip a light switch and bam, you're better. And that's not, I know that's not how that goes. You know how that's not how that goes. I just wanted to make that kind of clear. It's not just a bam, turn it around. It's work.
Yeah, and it's not a linear thing, because after two suicide attempts, a few months later, I still wound up in a mental hospital just because of triggers that I hadn't dealt with. So there was a time where, if somebody used words like narcissist or brought up things I did in the past, it would set me in a downward spiral. So it's not as just because you say you're going to change doesn't mean it's smooth sailing from there.
Right.
Every day it's a battle. Just like to this day, I have a very strict morning routine, because I know the moment I open my eyes that depression is there if I allow it. So I have to have a strict morning routine to reset my mind for the day.
Yeah, kind of get you going.
Yeah.
Now, we talked about, there's a level of narcissism that most of us have, right? Because it's got to be there for you to get up and get shit done and put yourself out there in your life. So how can you differentiate between a healthy confidence and true, like we're talking diagnostic criteria, narcissistic behavior?
Yeah. So the difference between healthy confidence and narcissistic behavior really comes down to, if it's a healthy confidence, that person's actions align with their words. Is really what it comes down to, right? If you're in a relationship with somebody who has a healthy confidence about themselves, and that guy just says, babe, I'm the best husband you're ever going to have, and he lives up to that, right, on a day-to-day basis, that's confidence, right? But like if he says, I love you more than you know, but he's going behind your back, then that's just narcissistic behavior. So really just comes down, and if their actions align with their words.
Yeah.
Right. Is really the common denominator. It's a very simple
No, that's
deciding factor, but that's what it comes down to. Actions aligning with words.
Yeah. And I think that that's great because it's something that is so clear. Like I had never thought of it in those terms, but when you put it that way, it's like, yeah, actually, that is exactly it.
Yeah, 100%, 100%.
Which is great. For those who might not be familiar, what are some common traits or red flags associated with narcissistic behavior, and how can folks identify them early on in a relationship?
Yeah. So, like common traits or red flags are really inconsistent behavior. So let's just say like you're just starting a relationship, right? And usually, narcissists are really good at love bombing, especially at the beginning, and making you feel like you're the most important thing ever. And then they'll also act like they've never met you before or be extremely cold to you for whatever reason. That's the biggest red flag. They love bombing, and then, like I talked before, constantly being able to blame others, always being in this victim mode, like, I'm this way because such and such happened to me, or this person did this to me, so I did this. So really, if somebody's always in victim mode, always having somebody to blame for something, and inconsistent behavior such as like love bombing and then going the opposite direction,
Mm-hmm.
telling you how great you are, but then blaming you for something that they did are the biggest red flags
Mm-hmm.
at that point.
And you want to explain what love bombing is also, because I,
Yeah,
some people might not be familiar with the term.
I don't have the actual definition, but love bombing is like if you guys get together and he just love bombs you by constantly giving you compliments, giving you gifts, um, showing you off, telling you you're the greatest thing in the world. And a lot of times it's in front of other people. When you guys get home, you guys are like brother and sister. Is the best way I can explain it.
Mm-hmm.
In public, you're the greatest thing ever. But then majority of the time when you guys are at home, you guys are very distant, and it's the opposite of love bombing.
Yeah. And I don't know how much you know about my background, but but
Okay.
I've experienced it as, if someone screws up in a relationship and then all of a sudden it's over the top making up for it. It's taking you on a
Yeah.
trip, it's giving you flowers, it's bringing you chocolates, it's being just the most sweet, perfect person you can, like inhumanly so, right? To make
Yeah.
up for something that was normally would throw up a red flag in your mind, but then they make up for it so well
To
out on the
distract
backside. Yeah. Yeah.
you. Yeah.
And
That's a good that's
I've seen that
insight.
both ways where it's like everything public has to be perfect. And then also if something does get messed up, it's even in private, they're doing this love bombing stuff. So, yeah, it's normal to have like someone bring you flowers and chocolates and that kind of thing. Like that, I don't want to say that's not normal because it totally is. If you get into a big fight and your sweetie wants to bring you some flowers, that's okay. But
Yeah.
it's when it becomes over the top, and I don't know how to explain where that line is, but at some point there's a line.
Yeah, I think love bombing, like everybody messes up and everybody wants to make things
Yeah.
right, right? And I think a way to decipher which one is right. If somebody messes up and makes a mistake, obviously, whether it's flowers, whether it's a trip, but it's also the fact of taking ownership for what they did
Yeah.
instead of being like distracting you with, "Hey, let's go on a trip," and just not addressing what the issue was. I think
Yeah.
that's the difference. Is
Yeah,
first taking
lack of
ownership.
apology, lack of ownership of any part of any responsibility. Because listen, everyone's going to mess up. It's
Yeah,
just a fact in relationships, in life in general. Everybody fucks up, and it's okay. But it's saying you're sorry after is really important. And if instead of saying you're sorry, your partner is just covering it up with all this stuff, and especially if they find a way to say, I'm sorry you messed up, here's some flowers, like
yeah, exactly. 100%.
Hmm.
100%.
Your program, and it's I'm going to post a link to your website one more time because it's called the Newborn Blueprint, which I think is really clever. By the way, I like that name. So your program aims to help men avoid common pitfalls leading to extreme narcissism. Can you elaborate a little bit on what those pitfalls are and provide insights into how folks can steer clear of them?
Yeah. So I would say, like right now in modern society, the biggest pitfall for men is immediate satisfaction.
Mm.
So, like for me, there was a time at my most narcissistic where like I would take full advantage of social media in the worst way to lie, cheat, deceit, all that stuff, right? And so, the immediate satisfaction like is there, but also if my girlfriend did find out or these women turn me down, guess what? I'll just go find somebody else at my fingertips, right? So that's one of the biggest pitfalls with men is when if you're struggling and let's just say you really messed up, and your girlfriend leaves you. To be honest, at surface level, it's going to be much easier just to get on a dating app or in the DMs and find somebody else that's interested in you, and you're right back in the mix.
Mm-hmm. Without having to process.
You don't have to process anything. So it's actually preventing you from becoming the person that you want. And most of the time we don't do it consciously because it's out of habit, right? And when you're constantly finding that immediate satisfaction, you're not going through the work to discover your purpose in life. Like your purpose is not to rack up as many women as possible. It's not even to rack up as much money as possible because that's at your fingertips in some way, shape, or form. So the pitfall of immediate satisfaction leads to the bigger pitfall of not having a direct purpose in life.
Mm.
And when you don't have a purpose in life, when you're not living out your purpose day to day, you don't have ownership of your life. And when you don't have ownership of your life, you blame everybody else and you operate from victim mode, which is one of the common traits of narcissism. So those are the main downfalls. It starts with the level of immediate satisfaction that guys or women have access to, right? If they're feeling bad, if they want to drink, if they want drugs, if they want sex, it's right there at their fingertips. And that has no transformational value for anybody.
Yeah. Now we are talking about this mostly in terms of men, but you just mentioned, or women. So how many, I guess on average, how many women do you work with versus men that you work with this particular portion of your program where you're trying to help them with not being a narcissist?
So actually, it's still majority amount of women because I'm so transparent about my journey, and it's I don't want to say it's funny, but so like I talk about narcissism on my social media, and women will comment and be like, "Oh, I'm so sorry you had to deal with a narcissist. This is narcissist to a T, what you described." And like I know that because that was, you know what I mean? And then they're like, "Oh, never mind." But so the majority of clientele are women because they're trying to heal from narcissism. And obviously, a lot of people, you're just left in a very confused state, really questioning your self-worth and all that stuff. And I'm able to be extremely transparent and help guide them where they need to go, but also help understand that what they were on the receiving end actually had nothing to do with them specifically, but also make them aware of how they contributed to that narcissistic fuel without even realizing it. So majority of it is women.
Yeah. Are men
how to avoid men like I was really.
Yeah. Are men just more predisposed to being narcissist, or what do you think is driving that?
I don't think men are more predisposed. I think I think men don't talk about it as much. I think there's a lot of narcissistic women where, if I don't want to project, but from what I see, like if a man suffers at the hands of a narcissistic woman, he'll probably quietly go through his stuff, whatever that is. Women suffering from a narcissistic man will tend to be a little more vocal, I feel like. So I feel like people think majority of men are narcissists compared to women. I'm not so sure about that given society and OnlyFans and stuff like that, So again, those aren't like scientific opinions.
No, that's
this given.
Yeah, no. This is not a scientific. If anyone is here for scientific opinions, you are in the wrong. I can recommend some great podcasts. It's not this one.
That's just my thought process at this given time right now.
We're here for a good conversation. That's all.
That's right. I'm in it.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like that kind of it relates a little bit to men's mental health also, right? Because you hear all the time about mental health and everything, but there's still this stigma around men's mental health where, well, not if you're a man, you don't talk about that. You just keep it all inside. And at the same time, we're encouraging when a woman comes out and says, oh, well, I'm suffering from anxiety or whatever it is. And so, I feel like that stigma is there for mental health. And I wonder if it's kind of the same, but opposite for narcissism, right? Because you're saying, a man is not going to want to admit that he was in something like that, where a woman is like, look at what I just went through, know? So, I mean, that makes sense to me. Again, not scientific conversation here.
But we're going with it.
Yeah. Are there specific warning signs that someone is on the path to becoming a narcissist, and how can intervention occur if you're not quite there yet?
Warning signs on the path to become a narcissist is probably like a growing lack of empathy and more disregard for other people's feelings. Like I said, if you're starting a relationship and you're getting love bombed, and then he becomes a little less more empathetic to your day-to-day stuff and really disregards your feelings or anybody else's feelings other than theirs, and slowly over time not taking responsibility for their own actions and outcomes. You'll just notice a shift in behavior. There'll be a slight shift in compassion, empathy, overall compassion. And then how can an intervention occur? Really, I can only really speak for me. The only way an intervention would have occurred for me is like if my girlfriend at the time would have asked me to go to like therapy from a supportive state.
Yeah.
Because like I knew something was terribly wrong, but again, on the outside, I was in a happy relationship. I was a full-time model, had a very successful personal training career. So for me to go up to somebody and tell them I'm struggling, most people would have just been like, dude, what do you got not to be happy about, right? And that would have just made it worse. So I was just trying to internally process it. Whereas like if somebody close to me, again, they can't read my mind, they don't know what's going on, but if somebody could have said, hey, why don't we get you set up so you can just go talk to somebody and go from there from a supportive standpoint. That's the best way intervention can occur. The only other way an intervention is going to occur is through rock bottom or massive pain. It's either pain or insight that creates intervention and transformation.
Pain or insight, That's
so I'm trying
unfortunately
to
true.
To the insight, so they don't have to get to the pain.
Yeah.
But yeah, in any aspect, those are the only two ways to transform is through pain or insight.
Yeah. Do you think that if someone is like not quite there, they're on that path to becoming a narcissist, but not quite there, are they going to be receptive to the suggestion of therapy typically?
Well, that's why all you can do is suggest it.
Yeah.
That's all you can do is suggest it. So that, again, that's the point of insight. So hopefully that person's like, all right, I'll go. It can't hurt me. Or like, I'll go because I know, like, I'm starting to act out of alignment,
Mm-hmm.
you know? And if that's the point of insight. And if that insight doesn't happen, then it's a matter of till they get to the pain point.
Yeah.
And, you know, sometimes the pain is what's necessary. Like it took everybody finally removing themselves for me to hit that pain point of transformation.
Yeah. Yeah, that rock bottom is not fun, y'all.
No, I don't recommend it.
Yeah. So we talked a little bit about kind of working with folks to avoid becoming a narcissist. But on the flip side, your program also teaches women to avoid relationships with narcissists. So what advice do you offer to folks who are navigating the dating scene, which is vastly different now from what it was when I was much younger, before my marriage, to make sure that they build healthy connections?
Yeah. So if you're in the dating scene trying to avoid relationship with narcissists, so first off, it starts with your relationship with yourself. So you can't operate from a place thinking that someone else can make you happy or make you worthy or make you feel loved. Those are all things that we create internally. So you have to build a healthy connection with yourself, meaning that you could meet the greatest person in the world and start dating them, even marrying them. They could walk out of your life at any given point. You don't control that. And if they do walk out of your life, you have to fully understand that that does not devalue you or lower your self-worth on any level. Whether you have 10 failed relationships or one massive failure, those do not determine your self-worth.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the connection you have to have, because if you have that connection, you're naturally going to have boundaries. So that's going to eliminate and make you hypersensitive to the red flags of narcissism, the stuff that we spoke about. But if you're wishy-washy and you're a people pleaser and you're wanting the partner to, you feel like that's the missing piece, is having this partner, then your boundaries become a little more flimsy, right? Because now if you're interacting with a narcissist and they're going to start love bombing you, you're going to be all in, right? And the moment they pull that away, you're going to start questioning yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. And I'm glad you brought up boundaries also, because boundaries in a relationship are necessary. Like full stop there. Just absorb that information, everybody, because every relationship needs to have boundaries, whether that's a parent-child relationship. I have boundaries with my kids. Do they cross them all the time? Yes, unfortunately they do. But I just have to keep resetting them with them, right? So a boundary, a parent-child boundary relationship has boundaries. A worker boss, whatever relationship has boundaries. Online relationships have boundaries. Your romantic relationships also need to have boundaries as well. Sibling relationships have boundaries, believe it or not.
Yeah.
So how can someone set boundaries in a relationship to protect themselves from narcissistic behavior, or to detect narcissistic behavior also?
Well, it starts with, before you try to set boundaries, you have to set standards for yourself. So whatever your standards are that you set for yourself, that will naturally create boundaries. So if you have standards, when people try to set boundaries without having standards, it becomes very confusing for that person.
Mm-hmm.
Because boundaries essentially stereotype people if you don't have standards. If you have standards for yourself, then the boundaries naturally occur, meaning I'm not going to allow somebody who does A, B, or C, or has this type of personality. That naturally puts up a boundary based on that person that does A, B, or C has a certain personality. If you have boundary with no standards, you make superficial boundaries.
Mm-hmm.
And guess what? They work their way around those boundaries because you don't have the standards set in place. So now you're getting wrapped up in inconsistent relationships, toxic relationships, because you don't have your standards in place over your boundaries. Does that make sense?
Yeah. So what's an example of a boundary that is healthy that a narcissist might cross?
Trust.
Mm.
Trust, honesty, consistency. Right. If you have a boundary of consistency and they start showing inconsistency, then you know that's a red flag.
Mm-hmm.
Right. If you have a standard that says I only operate with people whose words match their actions, then you give yourself a bigger parameter to allow the right people in your life.
Mm-hmm.
Because all they have to do is their words and actions have to align, right? That allows for a lot of different personalities, but at the end of the day, if that person backs up their words with actions, that allows more creativity, more interaction in your life. And we're all designed to have human interaction. We're not designed to isolate.
Right.
You know what I mean? So that's why the standards will naturally create boundaries.
Yeah.
Right.
We've got a great question that was sent in via Twitter. They asked to remain anonymous, but I'm going to go ahead and ask it for them so they can watch this later. Do you think the term narcissist gets thrown around too much when it's really just a cheating asshole without meeting diagnostic criteria? And I love this question because I also feel like it maybe does get thrown around a little bit too much, but what do you think?
It's such a great question because right now in today's society, I feel like narcissist is such a buzzword.
Yeah.
Right. Just because a person broke up with you because they no longer want to date you doesn't make them a narcissist, right?
Yeah.
If a person changed their mind doesn't make them a narcissist,
Mm-hmm.
right? So it's 100% a buzzword. So many people just attach it to their ex just because it's their ex, right? Or just a person that they don't like that they barely know. It's super buzzword. And also, just because somebody cheats doesn't make them a narcissist. There's a million different reasons why people
Mm-hmm.
do what they do. Right. So it's 100% a buzzword. Yes, they might be an asshole. Yes, they might be a cheater. Doesn't necessarily make them a narcissist.
Mm-hmm.
I still get accused of being a narcissist to this day for disagreeing with people or for me sharing my story and sharing and talking about narcissism. I still get accused of being a narcissist for talking about it. So it's a buzzword that people attach to it.
Mm-hmm.
90% of the time, the person that's being accused of it's not actually a narcissist. They're just figuring their life out.
And it could be that they have something else going on. Like if you look up so there's narcissistic personality disorder is in the DSM. If you want to go look up the criteria, you can look up the criteria, evaluate it against that if you want to. There are generally accepted things that are narcissistic personalities, and there are other things that aren't necessarily. I feel like a lot of the time people will conflate, hey, this person's a narcissist, but what they really mean is, and this is driven by trauma as well. So you'd never know where you're going to wind up when there's trauma in the background. But I think a lot of the time what they mean is, I think this person might have like borderline personality disorder or something, along those lines. And it's crazy to me that people will just throw it out there without really understanding the term,
Yeah. And like I said earlier, we all, at some point in some aspect of our life, we all have narcissism.
Mm-hmm.
All of us at some point in our life for a period of time or in certain aspects of our life, we maintain it.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's just a buzzword it's attached to everything now.
It is. It is. And it's tough because, there's a lot of things you can attach a buzzword to. I'll go back to depression for one, because I have major depressive disorder, and it's something that, you know, you can say, oh, I'm depressed today, and it's like, are you depressed? Are you just sad? Is there something else going on? And even my therapist has like called me on that too and been like, okay, but are you really dealing with depression today? Or is this just a normal range of human emotions and it's not a good day?
That's what I said earlier. I know when I wake up that depression is there. I don't have depression.
Yeah.
But I know it's there if I allow it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That's the difference. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's a great question. And I'm glad that you sent it in. Thank you for asking it. But yeah, I would say not all cheaters are narcissists. Not all narcissists are cheaters either. Well, I guess I don't know that for sure, but not all cheaters are narcissists. I know for sure.
That's true. That's a great statement. That's a great statement.
Now, you say your ultimate goal is to help others live every aspect of their life at the highest level. How can folks cultivate self-awareness and resilience to prevent the negative impact of societal pressures on their own well-being?
Yeah. So essentially, that's what I teach clients to do in my coaching program. Essentially, take them on the same journey that I went through, minus the rock bottom, minus all the pain, minus the suicide attempts. And it comes back to the moment we are put on this earth. We're all uniquely and perfectly made, and we're put on this earth with a certain set of gifts and atmosphere to positively impact the people around us. And there's a small time from birth to some point in childhood where we live our most authentic version. We know nothing about sadness, hurt, anything of that nature. And then the negative side of the universe, the devil, whatever you want to call it, attacks our greatest gifts and starts making us feel less than in some way, shape, or form. And it does it through the people close to us. So we automatically start changing our trajectory because we start thinking less of ourselves. And since we don't understand that we're under attack, we keep getting attacked through the people. The devil uses people close to us, the most familiar things. So the more and more that we start second guessing ourselves, we start hiding our gifts. We stop using our gifts. We put on this mask to hide. And so we spend a lot of our life wearing these masks and never using our gifts and never showing up as the person that we were designed to positively impact this world. So at some point, again, through pain or insight, you start questioning your life, start questioning your self-worth. The way to figure out your worth in those gifts is to start unpacking all the negative things that you say to yourself on a daily basis. So if you write down every single negative thing you say to yourself when life goes to shit, you have that list, right, of all these negative statements. Now, if I have you write the opposite of those statements right next to it, each of those statements will have a certain theme. That theme is what's going to guide you back to the gifts you were given and the person you were designed to be. Just like I said, I went back and did the things that, my adolescent years that I used to enjoy. So now through that, you can rediscover and reconnect with the smaller version of you that lived their most authentic life. And now you start building a relationship with that younger version of you, just like you would build a relationship with somebody if you just met them. You start building a relationship with that person as if they're right next to you. And you start doing things that make you happy. You start speaking to yourself the same way you'd speak to that small child. And you start rediscovering your gifts that way. And then you get to this point where you're creating the life that you want instead of just living a life.
It reminds me of the, I don't know who said it, but it's a fairly common, I don't know, it gets accredited to a bunch of different people, but it's be the person your younger self needed when they were young. That reminds me a lot of that. Yeah.
It's scary for a lot of people, not because it's bad, but because it's unfamiliar. Mm-hmm. It's the same reason why people stay in shitty relationships or shitty jobs, because what what's on the other side is completely brand new, which makes it more scary than what they're already comfortable with. So once you start rediscovering yourself, you start realizing there's a difference in spending time alone and being lonely, right? Because you can spend a lot of time alone and have an amazing life rediscovering yourself. That's different than being lonely. If you reconnect with that child, you'll never be lonely, ever. That's what I would realize, that I would never be abandoned, because I would never technically abandon myself. 5-year-old Derek would never abandon himself.
Yeah. That's really neat. I like that.
Yeah.
How do you encourage others to embrace change and embark on this journey of self-improvement, especially if they're faced with difficult circumstances, either from within themselves or from within a relationship that they're in right now?
Yeah, it goes back to building a relationship with yourself. So like I said, especially if you're in a difficult circumstance. So whether, job loss or relationship loss, again, you have to understand those things, those external things in life do not determine your self-worth and self-value. Right. So, like one of the very first questions I ask clients when they come in the program, I say, who are you? And they automatically start saying, well, I'm a mother, I'm a great employee, I'm a boss, all that stuff. But the question of who are you is, who are you if you woke up tomorrow with no family, no friends, no job? Who are you? Right? And that's what it takes. You have to build that relationship with yourself, because all those things could be taken away. All the difficult circumstances, right, or external things that at the end of the day you can't really control. You can't control if somebody stays on this earth or not. You can't control whether you get fired or not, right, to some degree, but it could happen, right? So you have to build that relationship with yourself, understanding that all the stuff that goes on around you does not diminish you in any way, shape or form, right? It's actually when all those things disappear, when you feel like your world is falling apart, right? You're actually, the universe is making a way for you to rediscover yourself. There's a reason why those things are being removed, for you to actually rediscover yourself. And that's what you have to do. A lot of times when things go bad, people start questioning themselves instead of reconnecting with themselves. They start turning away from themselves. They start saying, they start negative self-talk. They want to be doing the opposite.
Yeah. I was just talking with someone on Twitter earlier today, different person, so I was just talking to someone else on Twitter today because I made a post that said your productivity is not your worth. And I believe that wholeheartedly, but it is something that has come like hard fought for me because I've had to work through this. It's been years of therapy to try to come to that conclusion. And they said, well, I just lost my job, so that's hard for me to believe. And I said, well, it's not though. You're not your job. You are not your job. You are not how productive you are today. I am not the dishes that I did before this. I am not the dinner that I cooked. I'm not my kids' accomplishments. I'm not my work's accomplishments. I'm my own human being. But that is really hard. That is really hard to come to the conclusion of. It really is. It sounds very trite to say, like, just recognize that you're not your productivity. That's hard to understand.
Yeah. We have a lot of attachments to a lot of things. But again, I still have my same life coach that I've been working with for 6+ years now to help me through all that stuff, because it's not easy. I would say it's simple, but not easy.
Yeah. I agree with that. I agree with that assessment. Simple, but not easy. Yes. Oh, my therapist is going to hate me whenever I argue with her about this later. We have I've been seeing her for many years also. Great relationship. Okay, if y'all don't have someone who will call you on your bullshit, whether it's a life coach or a therapist, I'm telling you, go get you one.
Get you one. You won't regret it.
No. You might regret it in the moment of the conversation, but Later, you'd
long
be like,
term,
damn it. Yeah, long term, it really is. So we've talked about the importance of turning your life around and everything. What role does self-reflection play in that? And how, if someone is like, okay, I've listened to this, I've heard what you have to say, I'm ready, how can someone take that first step and initiate those positive changes in their life?
the first step comes down to self-awareness and acknowledgement. So like that's the first step in life coaching program is the awakening acknowledgement phase. Because if you can be 100% transparent, just like I was with realizing, as a common denominator and very narcissistic. Once you have that level of self-awareness, then you can start to unpack the root of your behavior, but also you can start to organize what essentially is yours and what was never yours to carry, right? And then you can start removing the things that no longer serve you, right? A lot of times people want to make these changes, but they don't want to take inventory of their self first. And then that's why they either, they never see the transformation through, or they feel like something comes up and just throws them off track. It's because they haven't dealt with their luggage first. So the first thing is self-awareness. And then once you have that awareness, you can start the detachment process from the thoughts, the people, the experiences, the things that no longer serve you. And that's like one of the reasons why our life coaching program is so powerful, because you don't have to become anything. It's not about you jumping through hoops and trying to become this new person. It's actually a removal process of removing everything in the thoughts and the behaviors and the feelings that no longer serve you. So you actually rediscover yourself that was buried under all this bullshit for so many years. So the first step is self-awareness, acknowledgement.
Do you think that, like, if you were to say, okay, I've acknowledged I need to make a change and I'm examining myself, what does someone do? What should they do next?
So that usually, it depends on each person's story. Sometimes the next step is forgiveness of others. Sometimes the next step is self-forgiveness. It's usually one of those two things. If somebody's gone through something extremely hurtful and they have yet to forgive whoever, forgiveness is the first step to detaching from that hurt. Mm. Forgiveness is for you, not for the other person. It's to set you free. So, each part is so different, but either comes down to forgiveness or self-forgiveness.
Yeah.
And really, any form of forgiveness is still self-forgiveness, because you're releasing that toxicity that's been holding you down.
Mm-hmm.
So like for me, once I was awakened and aware of my behavior, I could sit there and blame my parents or all the things that happened, but that doesn't do me any good. I had to forgive them, and then I had to forgive myself and what that person created. And then from there, you can start building up. But you have to cut all attachments, usually through cord cutting and forgiveness.
Yeah. Well, it is time for the magic moment of the stream, and I have my handy dandy magic wand. So if you could wave a magic wand and eliminate one common opinion or misconception or theory surrounding mental illness, disabilities, or talking about mental health, what would it be?
So the one common opinion or misconception that I would remove, staying on topic, is I see the comment and I hear people say, once a narcissist, always a narcissist. And it's painful in the sense of, like, we don't talk about drug addicts or alcoholics or criminals like that, right? We believe people can overcome those things. So to just attach that blanket statement to a narcissist is really, I would say, ignorant, because we've all had periods in our life where we're no longer that person. Whether you robbed a bank, right? Whether you sold drugs, whether you were an alcoholic, each day is an opportunity for you to change who you are.
Mm-hmm.
And everybody should have that opportunity, no matter who they are in this world. So that's what I would change.
Yeah. Yeah, people definitely do change. I mean, they change their behavior, sometimes for the better, sometimes for the worse. And you gotta, you don't have to give someone a second chance, but if you do, really give them a second chance to prove to you who they are.
Yeah. I mean, we each get each day we get a chance to rediscover ourselves. Doesn't mean anybody else has to go along with it.
True.
But each human has that ability every single day.
Yeah. Well, I'll open it up to any remaining community, community Q&A. So folks in chat, if you are here, if you have any questions, feel free to pop them in to the chat and I will make sure to ask them. And Derek, I'll just open it up to you and say if there's anything we didn't cover that you wanted to talk about, or personal recommendations or sites or anything like that. I will post your website, Facebook, and Instagram one more time in case folks want to connect with you.
And
there.
then also add DerekNewborn.com. So
Okay.
that's where females can go to learn more about my wellness program. Okay. And then if anybody wants to connect or reach out, the best way is just to shoot me a DM on my Instagram. That's the best way. I like to keep it human and organic on there. So just shoot me a message about whatever it is. If you're struggling or if you have questions or want more info on the program, just shoot me a DM. But DerekNewborn.com, check that out, and the NewbornBlueprint.com.
Yeah, that's perfect. Bite Mark says, thank you so much for being here. I had a good time and I learned, which is a great combo. Absolutely.
Thank you.
Yeah, and I'm glad that you threw out there which way is the best to contact you, because I'm telling you, if you contact me on Instagram, I won't see it for 6 months.
That's the best way for me.
I have a couple of folks who will send me just links and reels and all this stuff. And it's like, it really is like 6 months between me checking it. And then finally I'm reacting to all of them. They're like, at that time of year, huh?
I wish I was like that.
Oh, well, I'm constantly on my email though, so.
Oh, there you go. Yeah, I guess that's one way or the other.
Yeah, it just depends on what you're active on, really. Or Twitter. If you're on Twitter, man, I respond to those all the time. So all day, all night. Yeah.
I'm not there on Twitter.
Well, Derek, thank you so much for joining us today. I really appreciate it. This has been a wonderful, wonderful conversation.
Yeah, I enjoyed the conversation. Thank you again for having me. I appreciate
Absolutely. All right, chat, give me just a minute. I'm going to disconnect with Derek offline. I'll be right back. Stick around. That wraps up today's episode of Even Tacos Fall Apart. I hope you found this conversation with Derek Newborn as enlightening as I did. Reflecting back on our discussion, it's clear that avoiding narcissists and navigating narcissism isn't just about identifying toxic behavior in others. It's about taking ownership of our own actions and setting healthy boundaries for ourselves. We have the power to cultivate self-awareness and resilience, even in the face of difficult circumstances. And while it might not always be easy, it's worth the effort to prioritize our mental health and well-being. So, as you go about the rest of your day, I encourage you to take a moment to reflect on the insights shared in today's episode. Whether you're facing challenges in your personal relationships or simply navigating the ups and downs of everyday life, remember also that you are not alone. If you enjoyed today's episode, please consider liking, subscribing, and leaving a review. Your feedback helps me continue to create meaningful content, and it also helps reach even more listeners like you. And don't forget to connect with me on social media. You can find me on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, Twitch, YouTube, pretty much everywhere as @MommaFoxFire, MommaFoxFire. I love hearing from you and engaging in conversations about mental health. So don't be shy, reach out and say hello. Until next time, remember to take care of yourselves and each other. And as always, even when tacos fall apart, we still love them, and I still love you.